Hey, it's Jordan with TYT Network, Wednesday, June 15th. I'm here with Justin Holsomback. He's actually running for not national office, but state office. So I want to start looking not just at congressional races, Senate races, but state races, because if you want to break the establishment, it starts all the way at the bottom. We're talking even county clerk level. Justin is running for to be a state representative in Georgia. He's a progressive candidate, echoes a lot of the same themes as Bernie Sanders, and I'll ask you first, Justin, just to someone who might not be an expert in politics. You think Georgia, you don't think progressive. So talk to me about your path to running to be a state representative, and what's the climate in Georgia now for progressives?
Right. So I'm only one of three endorsed Bernie-crats in the state. There's myself, there's Michelle Jones, and there's Senator Fort. Senator Fort's the only elected Bernie-crat in the state. He's a state senator from the metro Atlanta area. The district that I'm running in is a historically Republican district. We've done a few Reddit AMAs where we've discussed the demographics of our district. It's been red for a while, but that's because the trends have been going more and more blue, going more and more purple. The demographics are getting younger and younger. And we also have in our district Kennesaw State University, which for your viewership that's not in the state, KSU is the second largest university in the state. They have over 30,000 students on that campus. And obviously, you look at Bernie Sanders' track record in the primaries, the younger voters are progressives. That's the future of our voter bloc. And so, a lot of our efforts are about mobilizing that campus, getting people registered to vote, getting them to register to vote on campus, and getting people engaged in the political process. Because since it's been a Republican district for so long, Republicans have not gone in, for obvious reasons, to build those, networks, those grassroots efforts to get people to go out and vote. So while our district has been historically red, our district has a college campus. We have two city or towns in our district, Kennesaw and Marietta, that have been trending very, very purple. And so we think we have a really clear record or track record or, pathway to victory come November. With politics in the state, we've had two big pieces of legislation get passed through the legislature in the last session, and that was campus carry, which was to allow people to be armed with a concealed carry permit on public university campuses, and also the religious liberty bill, which is, while North Carolina's was about bathrooms, ours was about being able to refuse services to people based on religious grounds. And so the really damaging effects of that was someone, let's say you're an ambulance driver and you come across a wreck, and there are two male drivers or passengers, and one gets out and starts yelling, "My husband is bleeding to death, please save him." The ambulance driver, the EMT, could refuse service to the gentleman because they have a religious difference. And so those two pieces got passed in the legislation, but they got vetoed because of a public outcry all throughout the state, both from businesses and private citizens and from other legislatures. And the votes were close whenever they did pass the legislature. So while people think Georgia, they think, Republican stronghold, red, red, red. It is trending very, very progressive. It's been trending very purple. And, voices like mine are now becoming not the outlier. I would be the youngest Democrat ever elected in Georgia, but my voice, what I'm running on, is starting to be echoed by more and more people in the state legislatures.
And just so my viewers know, I'm guessing 25, but how old are you?
I'm actually 26. I'll be 27 in a month. We're going to be doing a birthday money bomb on July 12th is my birthday. If people want to go to the website, there'll be more information on that whenever we get closer. But yeah, I am 26. Be 27 in July, and I would be the youngest Democrat. There's two younger Republicans that have been elected previously, but I'm part of the generation, the millennial generation, that Bernie Sanders had a stronghold on. I'm part of the generation that people dismiss as not caring about politics. My staff is made up of people completely under the age of 35. No one is old. I actually think no one is older than 32. I would need to go through and look, but we are a young movement. The progressive movement is a young movement. It's the future of this country's voting bloc. Just because Bernie did not win the primary this go around, and we'll see what happens at the convention, but that's the future. Whenever you have a candidate winning 80% of the youth vote, what that tells you is, okay, maybe it didn't happen in 2016. Maybe it won't happen in 2020. But whenever we start talking about 2024 for presidentials, and maybe even as early as 2022 for, the midterm elections, we're going to start having some really strong progressive movements from candidates. I hope I can be part of that first wave. I just need the support.
And let's not rule out 2020 because
Right.
considering the two candidates for president right now, it's very likely on the Democratic side she would be primaried.
Yeah.
Republican side, who the hell knows? I'm interested in terms of Georgia politics because I saw up front when I was covering the New York primary voter suppression and a lot of shenanigans going on that the Democratic establishment is so heavy here. And, two lawyers were pretty much, it was a David versus Goliath, two lawyers trying to go up against judges in the tank with the Democratic establishment, local, state, national representatives. Georgia, again, an outsider. I look at it as kind of the old boys club, the Republican establishment. Your elected officials who kind of look at people like you as, oh, these are the people who want the free money. They don't understand how the world works. They just want free handouts and socialism and pretty much the older mindset. You're talking about that you're starting to see kind of cracks in the armor with the progressive movement. In terms of Georgia, how is a candidate like you to break through? You're up against a Republican in the general election. Yes, you're going to be tapping into Kennesaw State University. But how does a progressive movement go up against the old boys club that has been there for a century already?
Right. And so our Democratic Party establishment in the state is not as powerful as the New Yorks, the up north states. We do have a pretty large Democratic Party in the state. They've gotten a lot of cash infusions. And one of the efforts that they're doing as a state level party is they actually have more money as a state party than the Republican Party to spend in this presidential cycle. And what they're spending that money on is, canvassing grassroots efforts of building a voter demographic. And while, yes, a lot of those efforts are centered around getting people to come out and vote for Hillary come November, what we've been able to do is they have local offices, and one of the local offices, the person that heads that office is a really strong supporter. She lives in my district. And so what we've been able to do is go out to these people and go to these neighborhoods where people think that they're the only Democrat, or they think that they're the only progressive or liberal or whatever. But you go out and you start talking to these people, you look at the voter databases and things like that and start identifying that there's people all throughout these districts that think that they're alone. And you go out and you talk to them and you go, this is my message. I want to help teachers. I want to help teacher pay. I want to help unions. I want to help a $15 minimum wage at the state level. And, you start having those conversations. Moderate Republicans even have been my strongest supporters because you go out and you talk to them about what you actually plan to do as a Democrat, as a progressive Democrat. And it's populism. People love our message of, supporting teachers through teacher pay, supporting students through less testing, supporting law enforcement officers with higher pay and better retirement benefits, things like body cameras that both protect the citizenry and also protect the officers, mass transit reform. Those are what we're running on. And so, yes, I have a D next to my name, but whenever you start talking to people about what a progressive candidate stands for, you start bringing over these moderate Republicans. And while this happens all over the state, there will be Republicans in my district, conservatives, that no matter what I do, I could hand them $1 million and they will never vote for me because I have a D next to my name. But what you start talking to people and what you start finding about is people that actually care about their community, people that actually want change for the better. They understand that progressivism, populism, that's the way that you do it. You start from the bottom and you work your way up. Mm-hmm. You start from the bottom by supporting teachers, what I talked about earlier. And so we do have a long road. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. If we do win, it'll be a single-digit win number, and we do have a clear path to victory. It's just we have to do everything right. But it's the messaging that keeps things strong, and then with the state party helping us through those get out the vote efforts.
And I want to ask you, I was at the Bernie Sanders rally the night of the California primary. You had it was night and day. For a while there, it seemed like a funeral because he obviously underperformed. People were expecting him to suspend the campaign. Then he rallies people, I'm fighting on, the struggle continues. But I spoke with people kind of about what was the light bulb moment, especially for the people who weren't really involved in politics before. Was it something Bernie said? Was it something he pledged? Was it something beyond Bernie? For you, you seem like you've probably been politically active for a while, but what was that kind of catalyst for you to want to put yourself out there? Was there kind of that, you know, breakthrough moment for you?
Right. So I've been planning on going to politics as far as a candidate level for a long time in my life. I've been involved with politics. I grew up in a Republican family. I think a lot of my family.
Shocker in Georgia.
I think a lot of my family members are actually trying to make America great again, so they pulled the Trump ballot. But so you grow up in a family like that. I had some really great teachers growing up in high school and middle school that kind of exposed me to the idea of liberalism, progressivism, some of these principles that I now hold really close to my heart. And so you grow up in that, you get really strong, you get really good at debating Republicans on issues. And then if you really care about your community like I do, I've always thought about going into politics. But, I'm 26. I'm almost 27. My wife just graduated from Kennesaw State, I guess, a month ago now. We were not, in my eyes, in a position ready to run for office this cycle. But then Bernie Sanders' message of revolution starts from the ground up. And, everyone wants to win the presidential race, and everyone wants to have progressive U.S. senators. And, that would be great if it could happen here. But, Georgia's probably a very long ways off before we're going to start having 2 progressive U.S. senators. Our 13 U.S. representatives are going to be progressives. That's a long ways off, especially whenever you start getting outside of the population centers of Atlanta, even Savannah, Augusta, things like that. So, starting from a state house level, and that impacts national news because of things like whenever the ACA, the Affordable Health Care Act, came into Georgia, our regressive state legislator blocked the expansion. Someone like me could have fought against that block, and that Medicare expansion block has negatively impacted thousands of people in our state. So, we put together all the different factors of a Trump nomination might, keep some voters at home come November because of the Never Trump movement. The really strong momentum that Bernie Sanders built throughout the primary of mobilizing these younger voters, which is the way that we win as the Kennesaw State voters. Our message, our opponent giving us those 2 votes, among others, that really gives us a clear way to draw a distinction. 2016 is a really, really good chance for us to flip this district. And so you combine opportunity to actually, win. Running is great. Being able to run and win is better. So, we have that opportunity, along with Bernie Sanders kind of inspired me whenever he said, it starts from the ground up, be the change that you want to see, change to believe in. And that's what inspired me, back in January to take the step and, register for ballot access. So, yeah, Bernie Sanders gave me the push off the edge to run. But this has been something that myself and my wife have been discussing for a long time. I'm passionate about helping my community. I would love to be able to run for U.S. Senate or U.S. House right now, but you got to start somewhere. And in Georgia, starting somewhere, I really do think means starting with the state legislature first. We do this. We myself, Senator Fort, Michelle Jones, these Bernie crats, we get into the state house, we win, or state house, state senate, and we win. And then we inspire other people like ourselves to run in Georgia. We aren't the only Bernie crats in the state, but we're the only officially recognized ones right now because there's not a lot of candidates inspired to actually get out there and run because they might not think that there's a chance.
Right.
And so we have 2 races. Senator Fort's already won his race. Then we have myself and Michelle Jones running for state house. If our 2 campaigns can both do something big in November, what that then does is inspires other progressive candidates in our state to start running. We start filtering our way up until we start hitting those U.S. level races, and Georgia can finally move away from the regressive Republican stronghold that it's had into a more progressive, I don't even want to say Democrat, I want to say a progressive liberal candidates like myself and Michelle Jones and Senator Fort.
And lastly, I'm assuming you're up against it financially. If it's you're up against a Republican candidate, if you're along the lines of Senator Sanders, I'm assuming you're not taking the big money from all the usual suspects. At a state level, let's say you get elected, how do you jump on, and how does state candidates like yourself in state Congress, state Senate, help with the movement against money in politics? Obviously, Bernie's movement is about a lot of things, but that's at the core. What can you do, and what could other more local down ballot candidates do to get the dark money and kind of reverse this political corruption?
Right. So our money for our campaign, I'll start with that. Our money that we've raised for our campaign is nothing groundbreaking. I'm not going to, my bank is never going to call me and tell me that the campaign checking account is full.
Well, after this interview, you might get a boost.
I really hope so. But, a lot of our money has come from, I don't, this sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not. Our average donation is $27 online. It's just people giving some extra money they had throughout the month. Our largest checks so far have come from people, moderate Republicans that, didn't like Bert's vote. We don't need to raise, mountains of money. The mountains of money would be used for things like TV spots and things like that. What we need to do is raise enough money to put our volunteers in shirts, give them literature, give them food and water so they can go out and share our message with voters in our district door to door. So, that's what we're doing well, raising money. We've gotten, a lot of our resources that we need. More obviously, we're a long ways off with November as the election date. And so anyone that's watching this, our website's justin4ga.com. We would love if you could help us out in any way.
And it's Justin, the number 4 or the spelling out?
Number 4. So Justin, the number 4ga.com. To the second part of your question for money in politics, our campaign, I have been approached through, a couple of PACs. They're not large PACs, like I said. Even our biggest checks, we're talking 500, less than 1,000, no commas. But we have rejected that. We would rather, the only larger organization checks that we would accept is from groups like labor unions, the Sierra Club, things like that, organizations that we are actually going to represent. And so as far as the legislation impact, we start getting these state House members and these state senators elected as progressive candidates. We can block any sort of legislation that decreases transparency through our reporting here in the state. So that's one way that I can directly impact it. And then the backdoor way to impact it is, like what I was talking about earlier, we start building these progressive seats in both the state House, the state Senate. Maybe we can get a progressive person through for governor or lieutenant governor. Then what we can start doing is really impacting our U.S. level legislators. So our U.S. senators, our U.S. House members, and start, really pressuring them to say, back here at the state, we are starting to move very progressive. And maybe you're the last holdout, regressive Republican. Maybe we can only take one U.S. Senate seat early on because we have 2. Maybe we can only take out Isaacson or, I'm blank on the other guy's name, Perdue. Maybe we can only take out one of those. Then the other guy is now sitting there saying, I'm the last regressive Republican. Any sort of legislation dealing with Citizens United comes through the U.S. Congress. I now have pressure from the constituents back at home, shown by the momentum of elected officials, to now vote according to what they want. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, in Georgia, we're a long ways off of being able to send 2 progressive U.S. senators, 13 progressive U.S. House members. But we can start chipping it away at the logic and the thought that, back home it's a bunch of, conservative Republicans, and I can vote, however I think that demographic wants. We can start showing people that there are progressive voices, there's liberal voices in the state that want money out of politics. I cannot donate $2,700 to a campaign. And, a company can, larger money donors can. Is my voice really less important than their voice? And then beyond that, I definitely can't donate $1 million to a PAC. Is now my voice? Well, I don't know what the number is, but if a company donates $1 million and I donate $2,700, I don't know what the math is of the ratio of that. But is their voice really 1,000 times more important than my voice? I don't think so, and I think most people don't think so. And so we start building from the ground up, just like Bernie said. Even if Bernie had won the presidency, without starting from the ground up, and ground up is state level for some of these states that are farther away from progressive U.S. level, and then for those other states getting those progressive people into Congress. This is how we do real change. We can get that Citizens United case overturned in the Supreme Court, maybe, but we can start legislating if we can start replacing some of these career politicians that, even if they're a Democrat, they're a moderate, a neocon, a neoliberal Democrat, that they don't actually vote progressive. And so you start building this momentum, and that's the way forward, I think.
Great. Thanks, man. I think you got a good shot, and we'll stay updated since it's not till November. But people could go to justin4ga.com.
Yeah. Justin4ga.com. And our big thing right now, if you can't make a donation or if you're not local and you can't volunteer, is to share our message with people. The other big thing is I'm really close. The guy that I'm running against is a one-term incumbent Republican. So he's been elected.
What's his name?
Burt Reeves is the incumbent Republican. He's only been serving for one term. We're only 100 Facebook likes away from being able to have more likes on our Facebook page than him, and he's been in office, or he's been having that page now for 3.5 years. So if you go to facebook.com/Justin the number 4GA and give us a like, that can show us a lot of progress or momentum. I know it sounds silly, but those are the type of things that whenever someone looks at things and looks at who has the momentum, I want every single step along the way to be able to say we have more momentum than my opponent. So Justin4GA.com, Facebook.com/Justin4GA. I would love any support anyone that's viewing this can give us, and we have a long road to November. Hopefully we can get back on here and tell people that we're starting to get some really big endorsements and things like that.
Knowing my viewers, I think you're going to be ahead of him on Facebook pretty quick. Thanks again, and have a good one.
All right, thanks, buddy.